Hey everybody, Tall Family Films here. I don't think anyone should be afraid to attempt to fix a problem when they have one, and that includes body work on your car. What we're going to show you today is pretty simple, and I'm going to show you how we took this Pontiac from looking like this to this, and we did all of it for around $400. We could have done it a lot cheaper if we had known the parts we needed before we started, and we ended up having to buy some things locally as a result. So let's get started. You can get a closer look at some of the damage that occurred here in this collision. The rubber bumper is obviously in really bad shape, but the actual bumper inside also took a pretty good hit. That crushed the air conditioner condenser that you're seeing here and the radiator behind it as well. So all of that stuff's going to have to be replaced. Starting with the bumper cover, the whole thing has to come off. There's some 10mm bolts up inside the wheel wells. And across the bottom of the bumper, there's a myriad of clips and 7mm bolts. Once we loosen those, the whole bumper will completely come off the car, which you're going to get to see here shortly. So let's get a closer look at how the rubber bumper is attached in the wheel well. So right down in here, we'll get a flashlight and get you a better view of this. There is a bolt, there's a hole through the plastic that holds the top of the bumper cover to the fender. It's right in here. You can see that hole. We'll get a better view of it here in just a second. So there you go. So right there, 10mm bolt. Just put it up in there and unscrew. That's the only bolt on this side. And then the other thing that has to come off are the clips. And there's 3 of them here in the wheel well. 2 of them are visible here, but here's one right here. Up a little further is the second one, and then there's another one up further. So take a 10mm socket with a small extension on it, because that hole is a little bit deep. This is one of my favorite tools, Milwaukee M12. They make a fuel version of this as well. It's a great tool, but sometimes it's hard to find the bolt, by the way, when you have it attached to the ratchet. So using your hand to locate the bolt with the socket is sometimes a little trick to getting it started. And if the bolt is too compressed up in there, then from the accident, you may not be able to get the bolt completely out right away. So now we use a flathead screwdriver, or at least attempt to try to remove the plastic clips. Sometimes the plastic clips are pinched a little too tightly if there's been an accident, and that's what's happening in this case. So flathead screwdriver doesn't actually remove them. I ended up using a pair of needle nose pliers, and I could, once the screwdriver had given me a little bit of room under the clip, use a pair of needle nose pliers, stuck it in there, and they just pulled straight out. So pretty easy to do. Just like the clips had been pinched, the bolt had also been pinched. It's actually completely loose, but I couldn't get it out. So once I removed the clips, the entire bumper has a little more flexibility in it, so it's a little easier for me to pull it out and get the bolt loose. And oh, there goes the bolt now. Here it is. It's 10mm. And then the whole bumper is loose. And it's really this simple. Like, body parts on the car actually just start literally coming loose. You'll be surprised how little holds a rubber bumper to a car. But once you start loosening it, you'll see what else needs to be done. And speaking of which, now we're removing clips from underneath the bumper. So we're under the car. These clips are a little bit different. Ideally, you remove the center pin out first, and then you can pull the outer pin that will be left into the bumper. But sometimes the entire pin pops out, sometimes it just pops out a little bit. But try to loosen it with a screwdriver, and then take a pair of needle nose pliers and pull it straight down. The inner pin will then release, and you'll be able to pull the outer pin out pretty easily at that point. You will not be able to get the outer pin out with the inner pin still in place. Here's a shot of just a couple more pins that we need to pull out. So you can see here's one here, and then straight across there are 2 more at sort of an angle. And the very top of the screen, you'll get a look at one of the 7mm bolts. So we need to pull all of these out too. So back up top, there's several tabs on the top, the plastic pins, just like we had on the bottom, that have to be removed on both sides of the top of the rubber bumper. Once they are all out, we can literally pull the rubber bumper forward. There's some 10mm bolts as well on top that we have to remove. Then to get access to the radiator, so it is right down below here, but before I can get into that area, this hood latch also has to be removed. There's 4 10mm bolts to do that. So let's go about removing these 10mm bolts that are across the back side of the... This is not part of the rubber bumper. This is a separate component, but this is going to have to come off because we know the radiator is busted. All of the coolant has already leaked out all over the ground, so we know that that's still work that is ahead of us. We did check to see if maybe just if a radiator hose had come loose and the fluid had leaked out, but both hoses were quite secure, so we know the radiator has an actual hole in it. So all those bolts are removed now. We're getting closer to being able to take this apart, so let's start cleaning some things up. And while we're up top, I wanted to show you how to remove one of these pins when we can get a better view at it here in the daylight. So these are the type of pins that do not just pull straight out. There's a two-part pin here, so we remove the inner part. A little easier to do up top. Simply remove the inner pin, and then the outer pin should just pop right out. So pretty easy once you understand how the pins work, but do not just pry on the outside and pull and pull and pull and trying to get that pin out. I guess eventually it would come out, but something would break. Either the bumper would break or the pin would break, so don't do that. So we realized it'd be much easier to remove the headlights as part of this project. The bumper will actually come off without doing that, but we knew we were going to need to get in there to release the radiator. So there's two bolts that hold the headlight in. So you're going to look at it on both sides here. This one broke, so we're going to replace that headlight, but there's one bolt there, another bolt here, and literally we undo the wiring for the headlight and the entire thing just comes right out. So you'll probably find this a lot easier if you go ahead and do this as well. So some of the same things that we did on the driver's side, we're going to do here on the passenger side as well. Remove the bolt, remove the clips. If only I could work this fast in real life, we'd have been done with this whole project in an hour. All right, so now there's not much left holding this on. As you can see, the entire thing just comes right apart. A lot of components that were cracked and smashed during the accident are now visible. And do you remember earlier when I mentioned that there was a 7mm bolt that was visible on the top of the screen and I used a red arrow to point to it to show you where it was? Yes, well, I never actually removed that 7mm bolt, so here I am doing that just now. Once that 7mm bolt is removed, then the whole thing comes free. So there we go. Very simple to remove a gigantic, or at least what seems to be a gigantic part of the car has now been completely removed. That probably entire process, start to finish, took about an hour and a half, I guess, and we were learning a lot as we went. All right, so now to the fun part. By far, this was the coolest part of what we did during the day. So the metal part of the bumper, under the rubber bumper, was pretty well damaged that we showed you earlier, and so we needed to straighten this back out because we couldn't get in there to replace the radiator. So we tied a chain to the truck and we gave it a good pull, and I'll just let you sit and enjoy this for a minute. So once we had pulled it a little bit out, we needed to move the chain over so that we could get closer into the deepest part of the damage to the bumper. So that's what's happening each time we're moving the chain here. So that's pretty good right there. We felt we could get it just a little bit straighter, but I didn't want to also pull so hard that we snapped the metal bumper in half. So while it doesn't look delicate, it was a slightly delicate process where we are pulling and waiting and pulling and waiting and not just jerking on it. This is kind of a slow acceleration that we did here. All right, so it's not body shop straight, but it's definitely straight enough for what we needed to do. Here's the last pull. Real quick commercial here. If you're enjoying this video, this is helping you, a thumbs up would be great. Alright, that's pretty good. That took us from literally having no room to get our hands in there to now there's probably a good 6 inches for us between the bumper and the condenser. So now we have a lot more room in order to get some work done. Since we're really focusing on the body work in this particular video, I don't show the radiator replacement. I have a whole nother video you can find on my channel where we showed replacing the radiator and what that's like, what that process is. But this is the new radiator in place. The condenser has a few clips on the front of it that snap into the radiator. There's some transmission lines on the back of the radiator. Transmission's also cooled through the radiator in a lot of cars. Put the hood latch back on place, 4 bolts to do that. The new headlights are here. Here you get a good look at those 2 bolts because they were cracked on the last ones. But this is this literally is just snapping the headlights in. Then there's this little gasket, this rubber gasket, just snaps on the top of the condenser. Then we put the plastic shield back in place, goes over the hood latch. Now I wish I had all the footage to show you now, but my camera actually died at this point. So putting the new rubber bumper back in place, we just reversed everything. We put all the bolts back in place, all the clips back in, we put the 10mm bolts back into the wheel wells. It's really quite a simple process, and you'll know if you don't have something right because the body parts will not actually physically fit back together. But this is what it came down to. This is how it turned out, so we were very happy with the work. Turned out to be a lot simpler. Took most part of the day to get it all done, but when you consider that we were able to take a car that looked like this and undrivable to looking like this for about $450 or so, it's a pretty good deal. Thank you guys very much for watching. If this video helped you, you can help me by subscribing to my channel and liking the video with a thumbs up. It really does make a difference. Thank you very much.